stepmother reported us to CPS after stealing all our food and supplies, leaving us devastated and scrambling to protect our kids from her. My husband drives truck and his work slows way down during the winter, to the point we had to take out a loan to make utility payments. On top of that, I've been dealing with PPD since the birth of DS2, almost 6 months, and we found out about 2 weeks ago that I'm pregnant again. In desperation, I posted on the food pantry sub and the response was amazing. We got so much food, I cried for days. I went to my doctor and we agreed that I needed some help and started an antidepressant. I accepted the idea of another baby even if it was sooner than we wanted, and began to get excited. I was finally in a good place. I had my first OB yesterday morning, and we couldn't see the baby on the ultrasound, just the gestational sac which was measuring about 8 weeks. My OB was really positive and said it may just be too early to see, but also mentioned the possibility of a blighted ovum. That basically just means that something went wrong and the baby never developed. There's not really a cause, just bad luck. I know it seems silly with how upset I originally was about being pregnant, but I was absolutely devastated. I sat in my car and cried with my husband for a long time before I went to my mom's to pick up the boys. We got home to all of the food in our pantry gone. All that was left was some dry pasta and sauce and a few cans of tuna. The baby formula was gone, the baby food and diapers were gone. The packs of wipe refills were gone. All of the veggies out of the fridge were gone, there was just milk and leftovers. The doors were still locked and there were no signs of a break-in, and the only person with a key is my dad. I truly believe my dad didn't know anything about it, but when I told my stepmom about the food we were sent she got vile. Started going off about how we shouldn't have kids if we can't take care of them ourselves and demanded we give them custody of the boys immediately. I was honestly shocked. She's been Beck before when we would ask them to watch the kids so we could go see a movie or something like that. Parents don't get to do that. The babies have to come first, but she's never been anywhere near this level. My dad stepped in and told her to shut the fuck up and we left, in shock but sure it was over. Of course I called and confronted her yesterday and she denied everything. I called my dad and he confirmed that she hadn't brought any food into the house and didn't think she would do that, but still asked me not to file a police report until he talked to her. I figured she could have very easily thrown it all out somewhere and decided I needed to file a police report anyway, even though they'll never be able to prove it was her, because this was a very clear attempt to endanger my kids. Thank God. CPS knocked on my door at 10 this morning, saying they had received a call the day before about unfit living conditions, namely, a lack of food. I had the police report to show them and half a can of formula and some baby food, etc. out of the diaper bag, and the lady seemed genuinely understanding when I explained the situation. I told her the food had come from friends, not strangers on the internet. She did ask if I had any relatives that could keep the kids if they did end up having to remove them temporarily, which I found very strange. That's not something I would expect CPS to ask. I made sure to specify I would want them placed with my mom and not my father in light of everything that has happened, and she assured me that she didn't think anything would come of it but she would be following up in a week or so to see that we had the situation resolved. I am absolutely beside myself right now. I never had a good relationship with this woman growing up, but she always seemed to really have the best interests of the kids at heart. She absolutely dotes on them, and has previously been very helpful. They helped with daycare for my oldest while I still worked, even bought formula for him when he was just a baby and we were, really, struggling. I don't want to believe she would do something like this but I honestly see no other explanation. We've changed the locks already but I have no idea where to go from here. My oldest was supposed to stay with them this weekend, which clearly won't be happening, but he's 4 and he doesn't understand why. I could really use any advice you guys have for me. Update 1. I felt as if I should somehow have known, somehow protected them from her. You all reminded me that she's just a hateful, vile person. It got to the point that I simply couldn't keep up with comments, but please feel free to PM me if you want to make sure I see something. I really appreciate all of the support, and everyone reaching out through PM has been a welcome distraction throughout the day as I try to get affairs in order. I did reach out to CPS today. That was an interesting call. Without going into a lot of details, the case is legit. The supervisor I spoke with was extremely kind and professional. I explained that I was asking because someone had stolen our food before the call was made, and I simply wanted to be sure it was an actual CPS worker as I had been pretty flustered when she showed up. She was shocked when I said that she had simply shown up, as it's apparently their policy to call beforehand to arrange a time that doesn't inconvenience the family when it isn't an emergency abuse call. We talked a bit more about the visit and she agreed with me that several things were handled very unprofessionally. I was able to confirm that my follow-up will be next Friday, and she told me that she's assigning a new agent to our case. She also told me that she'll be investigating that agent, but I'm not sure if I really believe that will happen. I'm happy to have a different agent anyways. She said that as long as they get there and we have plenty of food the case will be closed, because everything else seemed perfect, but to go ahead and have their doctor's records ready so that they can be on file. I went to the boys' pediatrician today and got triple copies of their records, so Monday I'm going up to the office and bringing in their records and leaving with a copy of the report. One copy of the records will be going in our fireproof document safe at home and another copy into the fireproof document safe at my mom's house, to be moved to a safety deposit box as soon as we're able. My dad has been the most disappointing part of this saga. He absolutely refuses to believe that my stepmom would do this and has called several times, furious, going on about how much my accusations have upset her and demanding I apologize. I finally told him I was picking up the CPS report on Monday, and will call him then to arrange a place to meet and talk without the Hamburglar. Like it? I love it. Shout out to the brilliant user who suggested it. I can't find your comment again in the insanity that is my previous post. My poor husband was out of town for work all week while all of this was going on. I feel like every time I called him this week something tragic was happening, from my OB appointment to the break-in to the CPS visit. I didn't even really get to talk to him today, between being on hold with CPS and running around to doctors and fighting with my dad. When this angel got home tonight, he had stopped on the way from his truck to buy me a $2 bath bomb out of his food money and promptly put me into a hot, candlelit tub. He put the kids to bed, rubbed my feet, and painted my toenails. He held me as I cried and celebrated with me when I told him about the overwhelming support we'd received. When I shared our story, he specifically told me to tell you guys that he's incredibly thankful for you all being here when he couldn't be. He is being an absolute rock star right now. He's currently doing the laundry and dishes that have been neglected the last few days while I binge Game of Thrones and Reddit. I'm really so grateful for the support you guys have given me. This community is overwhelming. I'll probably never get to every comment, but please feel free to PM me to check in. Having people form the sub to talk to today has helped me so much. You all are the absolute best. Maybe if I'm feeling up to it this weekend, I'll share some childhood stories about the Hamburglar and why I honestly should never have been surprised she tried to ruin my life through food. Update 2. I promised you guys a Hamburglar related update today, but thought I might be sharing a phone call since she was blowing up my phone at breakfast. This one's a doozy. So, my angel of a mother is just as broke as we are, but does have the benefit of a full pantry. She has been inviting us over for practically every meal the last couple days, and she only lives about 10 minutes away, so we've been taking her up on the offer a lot. This morning we were treated to a giant platter of homemade French toast that was heavenly. Hamburglar was blowing up my phone the 2 hours we were there, which is actually the first time she's attempted to make contact since I first confronted her about stealing our food. I refused to let her ruin my morning and put my phone on silent. We made our way back home about 10 a.m., fat and happy, to a screeching harpy on our porch. Hamburglar was on the porch with the original social services worker. I have no idea if this is a friend of hers, or just some poor woman who the bitch has sunk her claws into, but I do know that Hamburglar seems to have a direct line to her, instead of the CPS office, and apparently has enough pull to have her at my house 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning. I immediately sank down into the seat with a chorus of fuck 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 fuck, so DH parked behind Hamburglar in our very narrow driveway, thank God, and went out to confront her. From the car I could hear her screeching about the locks being changed, which immediately told me she was trying to get into my house again. DH said something I couldn't hear because he wasn't screaming like a lunatic. He later told me he said that we changed them so she couldn't steal anything else from our children, and she slapped him. Guys. My husband is a 6'2", 250 pounds teddy bear. He has never in his life dreamed of laying a hand on another person. He doesn't even like to discipline the 4-year-old because the kid cries when you put him in timeout. I saw red. I got out of the car and immediately started across the yard, to be intercepted by the social services lady halfway across. I told her, rather rudely, I'll admit, that I had been informed she was no longer on my case and asked her what the hell she was doing on my property when no one was home. She then told me that the only reason no one was home was because we had fled after she was called. I told her no one had been there when we left for breakfast before 8 that morning, and the dumb bench laughed at me. Apparently, she got a call from Hamburglar around 9 saying I was punching my 4-year-old in the face, repeatedly to the point of bleeding, and we left after hearing her make the call so that we wouldn't be there when she arrived. DH heard her say this and started across the yard right about the time she was telling me I needed to get the kids out of the car so she could examine them. DH positioned himself between her and the car and told her under no circumstances were the kids leaving the car while they were on the property. Hamburglar notices that no one was paying attention to her and took the opportunity to sprint past us to the car where the kids were still sitting buckled into their seats. Impressive. Really, since she must be at least 300 pounds when she realized the doors were locked, she began beating on the window right next to my 4-year-old's face with 2 closed fists, screeching, DS1, open the door. Open the door for me Mao. Now, Hess still buckled into a 5 pints harness, and the doors are child locked. There's absolutely no way Hess letting her into the car, but there's a very real possibility of her showering my toddler in glass. DH, again, reacts quickly and pulls the crazy lady away from the car while I'm standing there in shock. DH tells the senile old bats they have to leave the property immediately, and the CPS lady pipes up that she isn't leaving until she can be sure that she isn't leaving 2 children in an abusive and vulnerable situation. I asked her if she thought I was beating my toddler bloody, why weren't the police called? She told me that it was a CPS matter and not a police matter, and I laughed, and told her I disagreed and I was calling the police and started walking down the driveway, towards the Hamburglar's car, to make the call. This prompted her to begin screaming, "Don't touch my car." Okay. So what's in her car? I peer in the window and see a forking Amazon box. With our name and address. So now I get to tell the cops that not only is she trespassing, she's stealing our mail. We live less than 5 minutes from the police station, so as I'm making the call, DH decides she can't leave if she's blocked in and lets go of her. Well, she decided to shove me to the ground, get in her car, and drive through the yard, missing running me over by maybe a foot. DH sees what's happening and gets in front of her car, so now she's between the house and our car, with DH in front of her and a chain-link fence behind her. Naturally, she reverses into the fence right as the police cruiser is pulling up. I swear to God, a completely different person got out of that car. What moments ago had been a very fat version of the vampire brides from Van Helsing became a stuttering, hobbling grandmother with a bad box red dye job. It was unsettling. Because this is getting long, I'll try to condense the rest as much as I can. So, my mom will be staying at the house with me for the next few days to help me keep an eye out for packages and make sure I'm not here by myself if she comes back. I took the rest of the day to calm down and figure out how to move forward, since it was nearly 2 p.m. when the cops finally left. I'll be going up to the office first thing Monday morning to file a report against that CPS worker. And where's my dad in all of this? Radio silence. The package was a can of formula sent Saturday overnight delivery, so if that was someone here, we received it, mostly, safely. Update 3. Well, yesterday was eventful. I was able to get a temporary row against both the Hamburglar and her CPS buddy. The CPS supervisor is working with us to make sure she receives full legal repercussions and loses her job, as apparently this isn't the first time she's had an incident like this, which tells me that she doesn't know Hamburglar and she's just a meddling bitch. She even gave me a list of attorneys to reach out to if needed who should work with us pro bono on the theft. We got so many packages today. Thank you so much to everyone who reached out to help us. Not everyone was here, but I don't really have a way of tying packages to users, so thank you. Special thanks to the user who sent me bath bombs. I'm taking a nice bath when I get done posting here. Our follow-up OB to try to find out for sure what's going on is bright and early in the morning, so I would greatly appreciate any well wishes, thoughts and prayers, or good vibes that you have to offer. We're trying to be positive, but we're terrified. Update 4. Accidentally just deleted this whole post, so I'm internally screaming right now. Anyone here who has read my posts knows that Hamburglar doesn't think me fit to raise children, to the point of trying to have our children taken away. For anyone wanting to know, our follow-up CPS visit was wonderful and our case was closed. We went to our follow-up for the possible blighted ovum to discover a happy and healthy babe who was just not quite as far along as we thought. We got to see a nice strong heartbeat and went home with pictures. We felt confident enough that the only problem was an early scan that my husband went ahead and went out of state for work this weekend. I went back to my OB early this morning with mild cramping to find out that my baby has no heartbeat. I haven't even been able to reach my husband to tell him yet. I'm planning on scheduling a DC when he gets home, but if something happens before then he won't be here, and it's a 10-hour drive he can't start until in the morning. I'm scared and alone. Update 5. I'm so sorry that I haven't been updating here, so much has happened. So buckle up, this is a long ride. I did manage to get a restraining order against the Hamburglar, with the help of CPS. Over the course of the last couple months, original CPS lady lost her job too, as we weren't the first time she had abused her power, and Hamburglar ended up losing her mind in a spectacular way. So, I left the OB and called my dad, in a moment of weakness I still regret, months later. My dad was an angel, immediately supportive and offered to come get the kids and watch them for as long as we needed. Thankfully I turned him down, as the kids were still with my mom since I had been put on bed rest up until this appointment. I told him everything that had happened, including my current condition and the impending procedure, and the fact that I couldn't talk to DH until he got off work, so I was basically dealing with this alone. He told me to come out to their house and I told him point blank that the last person I wanted to deal with right then was Hamburglar, and he said he understood and dropped it. So of course he told Hamburglar what was going on, and of course she proceeds to blow up DH's phone for 6 hours. So when he gets off work, instead of immediately calling me as he would have, he called her first because he was afraid someone had died. He had hundreds of missed calls from her. She answers the phone by screeching about how I'm a murderer. I went off while he was gone to get an abortion. Apparently I had been planning this for weeks. Anyway, he knew she was full of shit and hung up on her, then called me, so I didn't even get to tell him in my own way. I had to explain that Hamburglar was a fucking bitch and how she had come to that wildly different conclusion. I called my dad to tell him what she did, and as far as I know he was pissed and promised we wouldn't be hearing from her again. I ended up getting the procedure scheduled for a week after the US, and luckily got the cameras we were gifted set up before then, because we came home afterwards to a completely destroyed home. The crazy bitch busted through our window with a golf club, that she would have had to buy for this express purpose, because neither of them golf, and let herself in, then proceeded to destroy everything we own. She destroyed our TV, our Xbox, took a knife to our mattresses, including the kids, and our brand new couch. She piled every piece of clothing she could find in the house, ours and the kids, in the middle of the living room and covered them in bleach, gallons and gallons. She smashed every breakable thing she could find with the golf club, including the toilet, our dishes, every window in the house, everything. She shoved our AC unit out the window onto the ground, destroying it. She didn't touch the food though? So I guess the don't mess with your grandkids food lesson set in, but that was it? We got home to Hamburglar sprawled in the front yard, golf club in one hand and my bottle of wine in the other, absolutely plastered, screaming about how I'm a murdering bitch who hates children, trying to keep my bab IVs from me. We're also those weird people that collect liquor in weird/interesting bottles, and every single one was smashed in the yard around her. I'm not sure how many she tried to drink and how many she just broke, because she would have died if she had drank them all, but she had clearly drank plenty. She didn't even get up out of the grass to actually engage us, just laid there and yelled, I guess trying to make sure the whole neighborhood knew how awful I was. So DH calls the cops while I sit there and listen to her screech about how I'm going to hell. I murdered my child because I can't handle the responsibility of being a parent. I'm a baby killer. I should have just died instead because she would have raised my baby, ad nauseum. She was honestly just repeating the exact same things over and over and over. Meanwhile, I just had ADC for a miscarriage maybe an hour ago. I'm dealing with the pain of losing a very much wanted pregnancy and she's here spewing her pro-life bullshit at me. After about 20 minutes of this, the cops show up. DH finally goes inside with one officer while the other stays outside with Hamburglar and me, and actually sees the extent of the damage. Meanwhile, the cop outside listens to Hamburglar for a few minutes, then turns to me and says, Are you sure you want to press charges? I mean, I can get her for drunk and disorderly, but there's no proof she actually did anything. Well, all of my windows are smashed, she's holding a golf club, and that's my bottle collection in pieces around her, so. Well, that's all circumstantial. There's no proof of anything. Let me tell y'all something real quick. I live in the Bible Belt. It took me all of 5 seconds to figure out what was going on here. This cop had listened to her abortion rant, decided she was justified, and was taking her side. Just wait, isn't that what a lawyer's for? We have a restraining order. You have a restraining order? Yes. Because she broke into our house and stole all of our food, and then tried to run me over with her car. While I was pregnant. I swear this cop laughed in my face. Okay, well, you're not pregnant now. Guys. If DH and the other cop hadn't come back outside right then I would have been the one in jail. I had enough time to scream I had a fucking miscarriage. Before DH was back next to me and moving me away. The other cop quickly shut the first one down and said they were taking Hamburglar immediately. He said it was the worst break-in he had ever seen in terms of damage. He actually called the first cop an idiot because Hamburglar wasn't in cuffs when he came back out and shut down the it might be circumstantial crap he was trying to spew. I guess some cops take restraining orders seriously? I gave my statement, had my mom come pick me up, and DH dealt with the rest of the cop stuff. My dad finally seemed to come to his senses and refused to bail Hamburglar out. The next day, when she had sobered up enough to call him. Him and several of his friends helped DH clean out all of our stuff, replace the broken windows, with windows that were a bit more smash resistant than the ancient windows we had before, and toilet, and finance new furniture to replace the stuff she ruined. He wasn't able to make us completely whole, but it's a start and we're working on rebuilding. Of course Hamburglar tried to plead not guilty and had to go to trial. We gave our lawyer, that my dad paid for, the recordings we had of her smashing our window, reaching through to unlock the door, and destroying our living room. It didn't get everything but it was more than enough, so when she tried to say she showed up drunk, because she was so distraught over what I'd done and found my house like that she looked stupid AF. Now let's fast forward to this morning. Hamburglar was released on parole, I think? I'm not 100% the difference in parole and probation, on Monday. So not actually 24 hours, but close enough. I have the kids in daycare because I go back to work in a week, so I left my house at 8 this morning to drive them to daycare and then went back home. About 45 seconds after I locked the door behind me, Hamburglar pulls up in my driveway and gets out. So, obviously she was watching for me to get home. She comes up to the door and starts knocking and calling through the door about how she just wants to talk. There's obviously been a bunch of misunderstandings between us. She wants to fix things, yada yada yada. Well, conditions of her release included she was not allowed to contact me or my family in any way, so I called the cops again, who were very prompt in showing up this time. I watched through my brand new window as 3 cop cars surrounded my house within 4 minutes of me calling, and Hamburglar was cuffed and thrown into the back of a car. When I opened my door to give my statement they were much nicer, and Hamburglar had switched back to screaming obscenities at me from the back of the cop car. I called my lawyer, who seemed thoroughly unsurprised, and he promised to call me as soon as he figures out what's going on, when she gets rebooked and everything. So, that's all done, and I'm sitting at a Starbucks down the street using the Wi-Fi because I suddenly feel unsafe in my home again, even though I'm pretty much sure she's back in jail. I'm sorry for the novel, but this has been a hell of a roller coaster and I needed to get it out. I haven't even called my dad yet. I'm waiting until I have something to say besides get your she-demon on a leash. Update 6, basically what the title says. How do I know this? She just drove past my house, in broad daylight. I called my lawyer and he said that there's nothing they can do about her driving down the road. I do live in a pretty busy area, it's not like I'm out in the middle of nowhere. My street runs between 2 major roads in my city. We can't even prove that she did drive by. And of course, DH is out of town for work all weekend, so it's just me and the kids home. He won't be home until Friday. My mom is out of town visiting her GF, so we can't go over there. I have a friend coming over to sit with me when she gets off work, but seriously? Anyways. I'll update if anything happens.